Welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and my guest today is Rebecca Rist-Brown, who's on the faculty here and who teaches criminal justice. And as I was thinking about having you here to talk with me today, I was thinking really people may think that they don't have much interest in or connection to the criminal justice system, but I think probably in the end we all do, or we might someday, or we would know somebody who had some experience. We have a board member on our foundation who's a lawyer who has developed a half-hour presentation for people to learn about what happens when you get a DUI. And I thought, that might be a really important piece of the kind of training we do for new students, because either they have had one, or they should know about it, or they should think about what would happen if they were arrested and driving under the influence.
Yeah, I mean, the stats right now say that 1 in 4 people will be arrested in their lifetime. So that's 25% of our population that's going to have some interaction with the criminal justice system. Even if it's not criminal, we still have the criminal justice system includes our civil aspect too, whether that's a eviction, a lawsuit. I mean, how many people have gotten in car accidents and have had to go through the legal process to get compensation for their damages? So almost everybody in their lifetime is going to interact with the criminal justice system in some way. I mean, even if it's just for a speeding ticket or seatbelt ticket. But the one thing that I like people to realize is that, especially with the criminal justice program, criminal justice just doesn't mean law enforcement, which everybody kind of immediately thinks, oh, criminal justice degree, the only thing I can do is be a police officer. But there's so many more career opportunities and jobs out there, such as probation, parole, corrections, court clerks. I have a student right now who wants to be a court interpreter, which is a very high need job. I mean, she's fluent in Spanish, so she's going to combine her love of criminal justice, language, and helping people. We have drug and alcohol counselors. We have students who want to work with public defenders. So the jobs are just really limitless. And the other aspect too is the jobs change once you leave Connecticut. There's other opportunities outside of Connecticut as far as criminal justice. But it really is true. Everybody has been impacted in some way by our criminal justice system, and we're interacting with it on a daily basis.
So how did you get interested in this field?
I actually had wanted to be in the military when I was in high school, but because I have, my ankle was reconstructed, I have pins and plates in my leg, so I actually just got disqualified from military service. So I said, well, I want to go into law enforcement, and I really wanted to be a crime scene technician. I wanted to process all the crime scenes and so on and so forth. And I remember it was my junior year at UNH, and I had found out that in order to do that in the state of Connecticut, I needed to be a police officer. Other states, such as California, Florida, even New York, you can do that as a civilian. You don't have to be a police officer. But here in Connecticut, you do, except for Waterbury. They're the only exception. So I decided, you know what, this is what I want to do, and I went into law enforcement. So I got my degree from UNH. I actually got hired by the Federal Police Corps Academy. So
what is the Federal Police Corps Academy?
So the Federal Police Corps Academy was a program that was under President Clinton to professionalize law enforcement. And in order to be in it, you had to have a bachelor's, and you went through a federal training academy instead of the Meriden Police Academy. So we had been scheduled to go to the Massachusetts Regional Academy, but there was some issues that happened there. So they ended up actually sending us to Salt Lake City, Utah.
Wow.
So I lived in Salt Lake City, Utah for 6 months and did my training out there, which was fascinating to see how, the Midwest trains. I mean, they are like 15 years ahead of us as far as technology and tactics, learning about what crimes they have out there versus our crimes. It was just really a different, interesting experience. It was culturally very different as well.
I would think so. We have to take a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, let's pick up right where we left off.
Okay.
Well, we're back with Rebecca Rist-Brown, who teaches criminal justice here at Middlesex Community College. And if we rewind the tape, where we left her last was in the shadows of the Wasatch Mountains, right, in Salt Lake City?
I think that's where they were. So,
yeah.
Yep, I was in Salt Lake City, Utah, which was a little bit of a culture shock. And those of my students who know me know I am addicted to Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh,
and when I was there was no Dunkin' Donuts. No. It was... all of us East Coasters, as we said, there was 26 in our class. We had 10 from Connecticut, 10 from Utah. We had somebody from Arizona, and I think we had one girl from California and 2 from Nevada. So we were kind of a really blended group culturally. So it was very interesting to see how the Mormon culture and the different ways that they reacted, their different laws, the different training. I mean, their training is much more advanced than what we have here in Connecticut. I mean, we were supposed to be trained in pit maneuver, and our Connecticut Post Academy said, absolutely not, you cannot train them that.
Tell me what pit maneuver.
Pit maneuver is where you learn how to, in your vehicle, your cruiser, ram the back of the side of the car to get it to spin around if you're in a pursuit.
Wow. See that in the movies.
Yeah, you see it in the movies, but in Connecticut where we don't do that, so that's one of those things that they told us you can't teach them that. We were also supposed to be taught in offensive fighting tactics for hand-to-hand combat, and Connecticut said, no, you can only be taught defensive tactic training. So it was just really, really interesting, and their technology was very advanced. I mean, I was there in 2003. They had the license readers where you just swipe it like a credit card machine and print out your tickets, and I think that we're just starting to get that now. So it was a very different culture of policing. So being with the Utah students and the Utah cadets, you learned a lot about their tactics. And then when we came back to Connecticut, we had to be retrained slightly. A lot of my training on drug enforcement and narcotics was on meth, because in Utah, that is a huge problem.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So when I came back to Connecticut, I had to be retrained on cocaine and heroin, because heroin's a big problem out here. And it was just a little bit of a different shift on what's going on. I mean, we were starting to see meth in Connecticut, but not to the rate that we saw out in Utah.
I wonder why that is.
I'm not sure why. I think it's maybe the cultural, what they have out there. I mean, our class project was actually, we created backpacks for the little kids that were taken out of meth labs. A lot of times the parents would be cooking the meth in the house with their kids.
Right.
And all of that stuff is toxic and hazardous. So the kids and all their possessions have to be decontaminated. So unfortunately the kids come out, they can't have their teddy bears, they can't have their toys because it has all that residue, all that hazardous substance on them. So they take all that stuff away from them. So we put together, we actually work with Walmart and local vendors. They donated some of the backpacks and the clothing. And these were like little jump bags for the kids that when you end up having to bring a kid out, you know, you'd have to take their clothes away, give them these brand new clothes. They got a new teddy bear. There was a book in there. I mean, because these kids are coming out with nothing.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it was just a very, very different thing to see.
And they're being removed from their parental
Usually
control,
a lot
right?
of times,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And the other thing with meths, too, is it's highly explosive. So a lot of
know.
times that's how they'd find them. So sometimes the kids would get injured in the process. So that was learning all about that, and then coming out to Connecticut and now learning all about heroin and marijuana and, you know, cocaine. So it was just a little bit different to see what the crime trends are in the different areas.
Mm-hmm. Do you have nerves of steel?
I don't know if you call it nerves of steel. Students have actually asked me that. How do you deal with the situations? And you go into almost autopilot. You go into your mode. Your training is so good that it's just muscle memory. You just react. Like I can recall a scenario where I had to go to a call. I had a man that was in cardiac arrest, wasn't breathing, no heartbeat. And I went there and I just started doing chest compressions on him. And I did it for 17 minutes straight, and it was 90 degrees out. It was hot. I was sweating, and I was calling for help for somebody else to come help me with this medical call. And we get done with the medical call, and he ended up not making it. And because I was so in the mode, in tunnel vision, doing what I had to do, I didn't even recognize this was a man I said hi to every morning at Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, yes.
And I think that was actually a good thing, because I think if I had recognized him and not been in that automatic mode, I think it would have been a little bit harder for me. Mm-hmm. But when I got done with the call, all of a sudden my supervisor showed up and he goes, "You realize who that was?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "It's so-and-so. It's George. You said hi to him every morning." And I went, "Oh my goodness." And it was just, it makes you step back and think. But when you're in the moment with these calls, you're in this mode. A lot of people ask me, how do you deal with going to calls with a deceased person? And I says, because in a way you don't think of them as a person. You can't. You have to think of them that it's a crime scene, it's an object, and that's how you get through it.
Is there post-traumatic stress, though, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Mental health is one of those taboo things in law enforcement. And one of the things I'd love to see changed in law enforcement is that mental health training and mental health help be almost mandatory, because there's a lot of officers that suffer from PTSD from going on calls, and they will actually pay for therapy out of their pocket so the insurance company never sees it.
Oh, because there would be stigma
They're stigmatized by their fellow officers. I mean, it's really kind of a problem. And I think that if we made it mandatory for everybody, that every year you have to go, I think you would lose that stigma. I mean, a lot of ways that officers deal with these calls is some of them will go home and drink, some of them will go home and maybe use prescription drugs or other things, and that's not the way to deal with it. But I think that we need to destigmatize the mental health issue within law enforcement, that it is okay. It's okay to feel. I mean, I remember one of my colleagues I work with went to that Hartford distributor shooting, that active shooter that was probably 2008, 2009, and I remember she told me the debriefing that they got was just, oh, okay, everybody's all fine. I mean, there was really no, how are you feeling? You just went to this active shooter call where somebody died, and there really, there really wasn't that encouragement to get the mental help you need. And we've seen that with the Officer Bean case in Sandy Hook, where the way that our workman's comp laws are is that you can't go out on workman's comp just for a mental disability. There has to be an accompanied physical injury as well.
I did not know that.
Yes. So that was a big fight with PTSD for him, is that, he didn't have a physical injury, but he was one of the first people there.
Right.
And I think that's an area in law enforcement that we do need to change. We need to recognize the mental health issues of our law enforcement officers and take care of them. It should be like a routine physical.
It should.
It should be. Every year you go for your physical, you also go for your, talk to a counselor, just talk about what's going on. Mm-hmm. And if we destigmatize it, I think it will make overall better health for our law enforcement as a whole.
So this is the field you're in is really, the subject of a lot of controversy in this country. And I guess I'm sticking with law enforcement, so you can broaden this out. But because of the issues of the shootings of Michael Brown and the Baltimore, who was in Ferguson, Missouri, but then the Baltimore shooting and I don't remember the name of that man, but a victim there. And then there was the New York I Can't Breathe one. There's a lot of antagonism that's being built up against the law enforcement system. And at the same time, I think everybody appreciates that we live in a dangerous world, and there were more handguns and guns in general in the possessions of ordinary citizens, and we need the police to keep order, right?
And I absolutely agree. And I think that the media, any profession you're in, you're going to have people that aren't good at their job, and you're going to people that are excellent at their job. And you can't judge a field by a couple rotten apples. And I'm not saying the people involved in those were rotten apples, but I think that that's what happens with the media. And the other thing is that people need to take the perception from law enforcement. I mean, if you think about it, you got up today, President Anna, and you're going home.
Right. I know.
You're going home.
I was asking about post-traumatic stress because this is a very dangerous job.
Right. There are days I didn't know if I was going to go home. I mean, one of the reasons I'm not in it anymore is I now have a 4-year-old. I want to go home every day to my child. There would be days I would be walking out after working the most worst shift of my life, and I'd be walking out the door, and my sergeant would say, "You're staying for another shift. You're getting ordered to stay." How many jobs out there does that happen to you, where you can have to work 16, 18 hours straight? When we're, blizzard out, horrible, snowstorms, we're at home cozy in our bed, and our police officers are out there helping people. And the other thing that people don't realize is the number of calls we go on every single day and the people that we interact with. And if you think about it, nobody calls law enforcement just, hey, come over and have a cup of tea. They're coming to you when they're at their absolute worst. Right. And there's sometimes that you feel helpless in law enforcement because you don't have all the tools you need to help that person. Especially with mental health issues. One of the only things we can really do is commit them or arrest them, because there's not a lot of avenues for us to work with people. So it's frustrating for me when people are Monday morning quarterbacking law enforcement in these incidences, but they're not looking at the whole picture. They're not looking at the totality of the circumstances. What call was that officer on before he came? Were they on a call with a 3-year-old that was in anaphylactic shock? Were they, driving to that call trying to help that person? Were they on the call with a domestic? Where were they at this point before this call happened? And also, police officers think very differently than civilians. And we can talk about that more when we come back.
After the break. Okay, Good. This is a good place to stop. We'll be right back. Well, we left off. This is Middlesex Moments Radio Show, and this is just such a fascinating conversation with Rebecca Rist-Brown, who teaches criminal justice here at the college. We left off with the police mentality is very different than the civilian mentality. So how?
It is, you're always weary of people. You're always looking for what we call the high probability areas. So, where would they have a firearm? Where would they have a weapon? Now that I'm a mother, I'm even more neurotic with my son than ever before because I know the stats out there if your child's abducted, which is kind of one of those things you would like to unlearn, but you unfortunately know this information. Crowds are a big thing because, in law enforcement, you always stand bladed, you have your hands up, ready. And, when you're in a crowd, you don't like people bumping up against you. Because it really does change your mentality. When you sit in a restaurant, you're usually always looking for where are the exits. You don't sit with your back to the door. Even when I meet with students, I'm always kind of bladed to them as well. I always have my hands up. The other thing, too, that we do that's a little bit different is we are always used to getting our paperwork done by the end of the shift because if you don't have it done, you don't get to go home.
Oh,
so
it's a great motivator. Yeah.
It's a motivator. So one of the reasons I can get a lot of work done here is because I'm used to that mentality of just get it done. And I've become very good at typing very fast, writing reports really fast because you have to in this field. And you have to be very articulate, precise, and just get it done.
You must have to learn how to write, too, in a way, right? So to describe what you just
the
experienced.
situation.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right.
You have to learn a different writing style of how to describe what happened. And you have to be very specific, too. You just can't say, the person was acting tumultuous. Well, how were they acting? What exactly were they doing? So you learn to be very attentive to detail. You learn to, what exactly did they say? Because sometimes even the words somebody says can be very telling about a crime. Are they talking about somebody in present tense or past tense? I remember there was one case, it was the mother who ended up, unfortunately, killing her 2 children, but had said they had been carjacked. And she started talking about her children in past tense. Which was very telling for investigators because they said, well, wait a minute, why is she talking about them in past tense? The husband is talking present tense, but she's talking about them in past tense. It was because she already knew what had happened to them. So it's little things like that you constantly have to pay attention. And you're also watching body language because a lot of our body language tells us a lot about a person as well. You can tell, are they lying? Are they telling the truth? Are they being deceptive? And you also are, not that you become just trusting of people, but you're wary of people. Because you're going into a call, you don't know what you're going to go into. Right. 2 most dangerous calls, traffic stops and domestic violence.
I bet, yeah, right.
Traffic stops, you've seen the videos on YouTube probably that I have where all of a sudden somebody pulls over a car for a taillight out and somebody jumps out with a gun and starts shooting at the officer. You never know what you're going to get. So it's really difficult for a lot of people going into this profession to understand that these are those things that are going to happen. And I try and tell my students that these are the realities of the careers. You will be working on holidays. You will have to work in snowstorms. You're going to get in car accidents. You're going to get spit on. You're going to catch horses. I've caught 3 horses in my career. I've caught 3 horses and I've caught 2 sheep and I actually put the sheep in the back of my cruiser and drove around with them. So you're going to have these calls. You're going to have calls that afterwards you're going to get in your car and cry. You're going to have calls where you just shake your head and go, why did that person even call the police? I had 2 neighbors fighting over their shrubs. Right. I said, is that really, can't we be neighborly? You're just going to have a lot of different things that you interact with. And I tell students, if the biggest skill you can have in this job is communication. Being able to talk to people, being able to diffuse situations. And that's actually one of the areas that I think women police officers are very good at is diffusing situations.
Yeah.
We're really good at it.
You bring it down.
We can bring it down really quickly.
Yeah.
And, so it's definitely a great career path for students. I loved it because I did something different every single day.
Yes, it can't possibly be boring.
Oh, it's not. Well, there are some days. There are some days that I was bored out of my mind. But when you get a call, you're like, okay, what am I going to?
So now, curriculum is a really great word. We use it all the time in our business, right? Because it's what we think we need to teach people. You are in charge of the curriculum for criminal justice. So we just talked about, you have to, mental health would be really important, ability to communicate in writing and being able to speak on your feet and think in diffuse situations. And then there's got to be a piece about understanding law, since you're trying to, create order against the law. So how do you think about the curriculum you offer, and what are the strong points, and what in your wildest imaginings would you think, we ought to add out this other dimension?
I mean, one of the things I first did when I came here is that I changed the prerequisites so that our English writing skills was emphasized because they weren't a prerequisite before. So the first thing to teach these kids how to write. You need to be able to write clear, concise, to the point. And then now our intro class is the prereq for the upper level classes. And the thing that I noticed this year that I absolutely love is that my upper level classes, we now are able to do so many critical thinking exercises and engagement. And my evidence and procedures class this past semester was phenomenal. We would talk about all these scenarios. And one of the things I got through with them is that criminal justice is not black and white. It is all gray. You change one little factor in a scenario and a law may not apply or a rule may not apply or you may have to do something differently. And then I would turn it around and I says, well, what if the scenario involved this person? I forget. We actually had talked about this scenario in class. And I says, if you take a picture of a minor's genitalia, that's automatically child pornography, right? And they were like, oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely. I said, okay, so what about this case? I said, and it was a scenario that I had seen on Facebook that a friend of mine had posted about. A child is the victim of a dog bite, and they get bit in the breast area. So the parents take a picture of it to document it. Is that now child pornography, according to the law? And the students are like, well, kind of technically it is. And I'm like, but they did it to document the injury. So it's just these things we try and, make them kind of break them free of the mold of thinking that it's all just, clear cut, because it's not, because every scenario, there's going to be these little things that change it. And I mean, they were a phenomenal class and we really got into it and they got so engaged in this that we actually talked about that Netflix show, Making a Murderer, a lot. I don't know if
I don't know it.
Oh, it's all about the Stephen Avery case.
Oh.
And the students actually requested that I build a class where we could analyze that case.
Wow.
And I'm in the process of doing it. So we will have that in the future. But it really is taking all these cases that happen and dissecting them and saying, okay, well, what about these elements and what about these? And, if we change this one thing, and this kind of goes also into the media as well, what is the media not showing you? What more information do you need to know to make a decision? And the other term we always use is the totality of the circumstances. Everything is really a case-by-case basis. You have to look at all those factors and what applies.
Do you have an opinion about wearing the cameras, the police officers being requested to wear cameras as part of their uniform?
I always had a camera.
Oh.
I always had one. It was funny because, you'd see me going up to the cruiser, up to the car that I stopped, and I was all friendly and nice. And then I'd get in my car and accidentally I'd always be like, oh, God, what an idiot. I'm like this person. And I'd get caught on tape. Talking to myself in the cruiser all the time, or I'd forget to turn it off and they'd catch me singing in my car. So, there was a lot of funny things you'd catch on it, but I think it was really great because it's accountability. It's accountability for the officers, and it's also accountability for the citizens as well, because there's citizens who make false claims. And that's a problem. And the one thing is that with these cameras, it really enables you to see the whole picture of what actually happened. There's one video clip I show in class. It was actually put out by Massachusetts State Police. And it's a video clip of a man who's being pulled out of a car and tasered. And he was saying, police racist brutality. But that was his video clip he put out. When you see actually the full video clip from State Police, you see that they asked him out of the car numerous times. The officer must have asked him out 20 times, explained what was going to happen if he didn't get out of the car. The guy still refused, tried to shut the window on the officer's hand. So the pulling him out of the car was justified. But I think that's important for students to see is that, the videos do help when you see them in their entirety.
This is such a complicated field that you're in. So do you have students who are interested, you must, in the broader fields beyond law enforcement? That's how we started the program.
Oh, absolutely.
But they kind of need to know all of these little bits and pieces. The piece about what is the law and how do you, critical thinking,
Absolutely.
How do you make a judgment? And the interpersonal skills, how do you diffuse situations?
How do you diffuse situations? How do you handle the public? I have a student who did an internship with a courts clerk office. And she said she'd be in court all the time, and you'd have people getting emotional in court, and you'd have to diffuse those situations. She would have to interview clients that came in who had cases, and she had to use her interpersonal skills. I mean, usually people when they go to court aren't really in a good mood.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so you really have to learn to use that, kill them with kindness, how to work with people, how to understand their situations.
What's the career ladder if you are in law enforcement? I apologize for reverting constantly to that one career path, but you can't be doing this. It's a very physical job. If you're catching horses, it's a very physical job.
It is a physical job.
Right. So where do you go from being a police officer? It's just, are they up through the ranks?
Yep, you can move up to the ranks. I know a lot of law enforcement that move from, municipal, they will move up to state, or some of them will actually go federal. So there's a lot of movement. A lot of the officers I know that retire actually go into working for private industries, such as like Aetna or the Hartford, looking at fraud investigation.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So there's so many opportunities out there.
Yeah.
I mean, my career field, I'm now in education.
Yeah, you're a professor.
I'm now in education. I'm now a professor.
Yeah, yeah. And we're very happy that you are.
And I mean, it's so rewarding, but for me, the most rewarding thing is seeing my students' success. Like when my students get hired by a police department, it just fills me as joy. Like I'm a happy parent, and I think that's why they call me Mama CJ, because I'm like their mother here, and when I see them successful, it just fills me with joy that they're going to be our next officers, and they're going to be dealing with these complex issues. And I think the best thing we can do is prepare them.
Right.
And say, you are going to deal with these things, and how are you going to handle it?
Mm-hmm. And you have the capacity to handle it. If you,
right.
Have certain skills and equilibrium and a professor in your corner.
Yeah.
So, Rebecca Rist-Brown, thanks so much for joining me today. You'll have to come back and talk some more about this.
Absolutely.
Especially as these various, the incidents just keep arising. There was, there are shootings on campuses, for example, and we have to think about those things. We're lucky that we haven't had anything like that, any serious incidents in Connecticut, but it could happen.
It could happen anywhere, and knock on wood that it doesn't happen here.
That's right. So you will come back, please.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much. This is Anna Wasesha, and it's been Middlesex Moments, and it's the criminal justice program at Middlesex Community College. And if you're interested in finding out more information, you can look it up on our website at MxCC.edu, and then you could get into touch with Rebecca Rist-Brown. I'm sure she'd be happy to walk you through the program. All right. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.